Okay, so my friend Marisha has been asking me to do a food demo on making gnocchi for the longest time. She moved back to Canada a little while ago, and I had shown her how to make gnocchi in Bangkok, but now she's back in Canada. So I already riced 2 potatoes that are about medium size. Generally, you're looking for what you would use as a baking potato. Russets are usually quite good, and I had 3 of these at home, so that's what I'm using. So I already riced 2, and I'm just gonna rice another last one. Normally, I would want to do this when the potatoes are warm, but for a bunch of different reasons today, we couldn't do it during the day after I had cooked the potatoes, so these are a little harder than I want them to be. But in any case, they're still able to come out. If you don't have a ricer, you can use a masher. But what I love about a potato ricer is that you don't have to peel the potatoes. You can just push it right through, and then the peel just stays in the body of the ricer. So it just makes your job a little easier. So now we've got 3 potatoes that I boiled earlier in the day. And they're all riced up. I'm just going to pick out any pieces of skin. So we've got that. I have here 1 beaten egg. And I'm just going to throw a little bit of salt into the egg, as well as some pepper. I didn't add very much salt, just a tiny pinch, because I'm actually going to use some Parmesan that I have too. So I still have some Parmesan left over from a party I had a little while ago. So this is what, maybe about half a cup of Parmesan. And I'm just gonna gently mix it in to the potato, which is gonna add a bit of salt into the potato mixture. Okay, and then I'm gonna add in that egg mixture. And so incorporating the egg to the potato. So now you've got all of your moist ingredients all together. You don't want to over mix this, so I'm just gently trying to get that moisture into the potato and Parmesan mix. There we go. And here I'm using what is kind of considered Italian all-purpose flour. It's called Tipo 00 flour. And so here, this is about 2/3 of a cup of flour. So you guys know I'm so bad when it comes to measuring. I just sort of want to do things by sight. So I'm adding, right now I have 2/3, I had 2/3 in the cup. I've added not the whole amount, because what I'd like to do is just gently try and incorporate the flour into this mixture, because again, you don't want to overwork your dough. If you do, then you end up with really tough gnocchi, and that's not what we want. Okay, so it's coming together somewhat. Just want to see if I give it a little bit of pressure, will it stay together? And it looks like it probably will here. So I'm going to try and pour this out onto my board and give it a gentle kneading. Again, trying to be as gentle as possible. And trying not to overwork the dough. So just pressing it together, turning it into one clump. And that should do it. I've got a bit of extra flour. All right. So now that we have this, what I'm going to do is just get cleaned up. So we'll stop here for a minute so I can wash my hands, clean up the work surface, and then we'll come back and we will roll out the gnocchi. Okay, so I've cleaned up the surface a little bit, and I've grabbed from the ball of dough, which we have here, and I have it under a cloth to keep it moist because it can dry out. So while we're working with bits of the dough, so I just grabbed a handful and I'm going to roll it out gently onto a floured surface, making sure we have enough flour, and trying not to compress the gnocchi too much. Again, if you really want pillow light, fluffy gnocchi, then the less you work the gnocchi, the better. So just gently rolling out until you get a shape like so. It doesn't have to be super even. The beautiful thing about handmade, homemade anything is it's not meant to be uniform, because then you would be a machine. Okay, so now we've got a bit of a snake, if you want to call it, and then you just cut nice little rectangles. Make sure you have a decisive cut. If you go too slow, then you won't get these, the shape of these pillows, as we want to call them. And I have a piece of parchment paper that I've got plenty of flour on. Make sure your gnocchi are not touching because they will stick to each other. Now I do have out a gnocchi board here in case you're a traditionalist and you really want to have those ridges for your gnocchi. You can indeed create the shape. It's a bit more work, but you would roll your gnocchi on your board like so, and then you get that ridged shape over there. To me, what I would do is, if I'm going to shape it with the gnocchi board, I would cut out all my pieces first and then shape with the gnocchi board. But again, it's a bit more work, and you're doing this homemade for someone else, so hopefully they appreciate that you're putting the effort into making handmade gnocchi. So just one more time, another piece that I've just grabbed a handful, maybe the size of like a big lime or a small lemon, and just gently on a nicely floured board, rolling out, trying to be as gentle as possible and not overworking your dough. And there, that should be a good size. And once again, being decisive with your cuts, and onto your board. Now, if you're not going to eat these right away, what I would suggest is that you can dust liberally with flour, stick them in the freezer until they get hard, and then dust a bit more with flour, and you can just throw them into a bag until they're ready to boil. But for the sake of this demonstration today, what I will do is boil some water and just show you the cooking process and a very simple way to serve them. So join me back again once I've boiled some water. So we're back. I've got the water boiling. I'm going to add a liberal amount of salt. You always want to have your pasta water salted so it tastes like the sea. So don't be alarmed, but yep, so we got a liberal amount of water. I did decide to do, at least for this little batch, the gnocchi using the gnocchi board, so you can see the ridges there. And now we're going to throw in our little dumplings. And the way it works is when they're done, they will float. So it doesn't really take that long. but I'll do it in 2 batches. I also have a bit of butter that's melting in another pan. So when the gnocchi, the first batch is ready, then I'm just going to throw them into some hot butter. And usually, if I had some sage, my favorite way of cooking gnocchi is to make a sage brown butter. So we would take the sage leaves, put them in the butter, and fry them up. And it just gives you a perfectly crispy sage leaves with that nutty brown butter. But we don't have any sage today, so what I'll do is I'll toss them in the butter and probably add a little bit of that leftover Parmesan. It's a mix of Parmesan and Gran Padano here. All right, so we can see that the gnocchi are starting to float now, which means that these little dumplings are ready to go into their brown butter bath. And then we will turn up the heat and add the rest of the dumplings. And this is actually just a snack for us tonight because I have planned niçoise salad for later on. So I actually took the rest of the tray of gnocchi that I was working on and put it in the freezer. And in about an hour when they're frozen, then I'll throw them in a bag and I'll have gnocchi ready to go for the next little while. So, and this all doesn't take long at all. I mean, we started filming 15 minutes ago, and to mix up the dough, roll out the gnocchi, especially if you're not using the gnocchi board, and boil them up and then fry hasn't taken too long at all. So it's actually a lot faster than one might think, but for some strange reason, it's gnocchi is one of those things that people think is quite intimidating. Maybe because it's considered something really special on a menu when you go out to eat at an Italian restaurant. Other variants that I like to do with my gnocchi is to add a little bit of nutmeg. That's really inspired by, you know, the German dumplings, Spätzle. In a dumpling recipe, you would add some nutmeg. And I kind of like a little bit in my gnocchi, but I didn't do it this time. So we see we've got the brown butter, you know, and just because we like spice, I think I'm going to add a little bit of chili. And then a little bit of pepper, and add the cheese. And that's basically a snack for us. There we go. So, grab a couple of forks. Not chewy, not hard, light and fluffy. You've got the flavor of the parm within the gnocchi, which isn't traditional, by the way. Most recipes that you see just call for potato, flour, eggs, salt, and pepper. But I just like to add a little bit of parm into mine. And with the hint of the chili, it's just perfect. This is a perfect snack just for me. Maybe not for the cameraman. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. And of course, this is dedicated to my friend Marisha and Esau, because I think Esau needs to learn how to make this too. That's her son. Enjoy.